living longer, living healthier, living better than ever before. Welcome to Mountain Pacific's Healthy Living for Life, a weekly series that gives you the information, education, and expert insight you need to become an active participant in today's ever-changing healthcare climate. Here now is today's program host.
Roughly 37 million adults in our country have kidney disease, costing us and our healthcare system $84 billion a year annually in treatment. Welcome to Healthy Living for Life, a show dedicated to helping you do just that. I'm your host, Janet Whitmoyer, and today we'll talk about the importance of keeping your kidneys healthy and how to know when they're working or not working correctly. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Healthy Living for Life. Diabetes and high blood pressure are the leading causes of kidney disease in our country. That represents about 3 in every 4 new cases. Joining me first of all today is Melissa House, the program manager for the state of Montana's diabetes program. Welcome to you, Melissa. And I want to start off knowing that this is a real personal issue for you, as I know you've had a kidney transplant. So I'd like to start off the show by having you go back to way in the beginning when you knew something wasn't quite right. Can you tell us about that?
Sure, and thank you for having me today. To give you a little bit of background, when I was in 5th grade, I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. And so I had that most of my childhood and into my early adulthood. I had just, when I kind of figured something was going wrong, I had just moved away from home. I had just gotten married, starting out my first real career after graduating college. Things were going really well for me. I had an insulin pump. I was testing out a continuous glucose monitor. Things were going really well. I was seeing my doctor every 3 months. My A1Cs were under control. And things were going great. It was a couple of weeks before, I think I was around 25. It was a couple of weeks before one of my appointments, and I had been experiencing severe headaches. I thought it was stress from work. I'd been working long hours, early mornings. Both my husband and I were volunteering on the ambulance service, and so I just thought it was a lot of stress, things building up. But I was just having extremely bad headaches. So I went into the doctor, and when I went in, they found that my blood pressure was extremely high. I can still remember it like it was yesterday. It was 220 over 180, and they were shocked. They were like, oh my goodness, we need to get this under control right now. And so that was kind of their first priority is, let's get your blood pressure under control. Let's see what's going on. You haven't had any issues before. So that's kind of when things started. Was with the beginning of this onset of severe hypertension. They didn't know at first what was causing it. And at first, it really didn't do anything to my kidneys, but that's kind of where things started, was with this onset of hypertension. And then from there, it slowly progressed into damaging my kidneys.
Okay. So before you had the transplant, were there other treatment options that you tried?
Yes, absolutely. So it was a long road before the actual transplant. It was about 3 years in between there. So as I had mentioned, the first thing for them was really to try and get my blood pressure under control. That was kind of the top priority. They did a lot of different tests. They were trying to figure out truly where was the hypertension coming from. Did I have something going on with my kidneys? Was there a blockage somewhere? Was it caused from the diabetes? So there was a lot of testing that they did. And I was at one point, I think I was on 5 different blood pressure medications trying to just get that down. Finally, they did get it under control. And during that time, and this was about a 6-month period, is when they started to see my kidneys slowly start to decline. And I started to get into early stages of chronic kidney disease. So the biggest things for me that I did was managing my blood pressure, getting in with a nephrologist, the kidney specialist, and working with them on just a lot of different treatments, making sure my blood pressure was under control, keeping my A1C and my blood glucose levels under control, changing my diet, really watching my diet, low sodium, lower protein, things like that, to just keep my kidney function the best that we could at that point, because we did see a severe decline. So that was kind of the first steps, was just managing myself, managing my hypertension that I had at the time, and continuing to manage my diabetes. So those were the first things that really, really took place. And that was over about 3 years. We did talk about dialysis, but I told my doctor, I put my foot down and I said, I will not go on dialysis. That's my goal. And I was very fortunate. I did not have to go on dialysis.
Okay.
So I didn't hit that point.
Okay, so then you ended up having the kidney transplant. Can you tell us, what your life is like after that? Is it pretty normal, or are there certain things that you still need to be careful of and take care of since the transplant?
Yeah, one thing I wanted to mention, I was fortunate enough, when I did get my kidney transplant, I also got a pancreas transplant. So that was one of the really neat things that happened. So I am no longer have type 1 diabetes. But yeah, for me, my life is pretty normal now. I have a family. Things are very, very normal, but there are also things that I definitely have to be careful of. I have medications that I'll always have to take. I'm immunocompromised, so definitely the things that we're seeing now with the pandemic, influenza, things like that, I definitely have to take extra precautions and make sure that I'm really taking care of myself. Diet and exercise are always going to remain important, monitoring my blood pressure. I no longer have diabetes, but that's still something that, I have to monitor, and I have to work with my doctor. So overall, I do think I live a very, very normal, healthy life. I do like when I go to the doctor now and they're like, oh, you're boring. And I'm like, yes, I love to be boring. So I think that's a highlight for me. But yeah, it's the extra precautions and, the medications and things, they'll always be there, but they're very manageable, and things that you can easily live with.
Okay. Well, Melissa, we're out of time, but I want to thank you for sharing your story with us. And up next, we'll be talking with a physician on how we can help keep our kidneys healthy, and a little bit more about what chronic kidney disease is. So stay tuned. Welcome back, and joining us now is Dr. Adam Rubin, a specialist in nephrology, to help us understand what our kidneys do and why it's important for us to take care of them. So first of all, thank you for joining us, Dr. Rubin. And what I'd like to do is start off with the basics. Can you tell us what the kidneys do?
So we always say that the kidneys function to clean the blood. Now, that statement encompasses a lot of things that the kidneys are doing. The kidneys, in cleaning the blood, they are going to remove waste products. They are going to help regulate blood pressure. They're going to help regulate fluid volume. They play a role in bone metabolism by helping to regulate calcium, phosphorus levels, and that's done through activity of vitamin D and done in conjunction with activity in bone. They'll play a role in controlling your blood count, your red blood cells. As they measure the red blood cell count as they clean the blood, they signal with the bone marrow where the blood cells are made about the rate of production. So there's a lot of different things that are all going on when we say that they clean the blood.
Okay. And so it's obvious that our kidneys function very differently with the different organs. Can you tell us a little bit about how the kidneys function in relation to heart health?
Well, kidney disease in and of itself is an equivalent or a risk factor for cardiovascular disease. And part of that is through the fact that the kidneys are going to be regulating salt and water balance, which is going to affect fluid volume. Fluid volume will affect blood pressure, and high blood pressure is a large risk factor for cardiac disease. Additionally, when people develop weakness in the heart, the heart is a pump and the kidneys are a filter. And if there's a problem with the heart as a pump, generally that's going to affect the efficiency of the kidney as a filter. And there's a lot of crosstalk between the two organ systems regarding blood pressure, blood volume, and blood flow.
Okay, so I know you touched on this. Can you tell us how blood pressure is really affected by your kidney function?
So the kidneys will affect blood pressure in a couple of different ways. The kidneys do have some hormonal control of blood pressure. There are certain hormones that actually will act to squeeze blood vessels. And the more the blood vessel squeezes, the more pressure there is. Just like if you were squeezing somebody's arm, the harder you squeeze, the more pressure there is. They'll also, through hormones that regulate salt balance, will affect blood pressure. The heart, as it's pumping, is pushing the blood against the blood pressure. The higher the blood pressure is, the more work that the heart has to do. If somebody is handing you weight to hold, sooner or later, you're going to reach a point where you can't hold anymore. And this can happen in the body, that if the blood pressures become too high, the heart will struggle to pump against such a high blood pressure. Additionally, high blood pressure over time will cause changes in the heart muscle. So if we think of somebody lifting weights, the more frequently and the heavier the weights they lift, the bigger their muscles get. Similar activity or similar changes rather will happen in the heart, that high blood pressure will cause what we call hypertrophy, enlargement of the heart muscle. And that can cause difficulty with the heart for filling, and can also affect blood flow in the heart in ways that can lead to what we call ischemia, which is changes in blood flow or decreases in blood flow that can result in heart damage.
Okay, so how does kidney health change as we age?
There tends to be some decline in kidney function as people age. That's not 100% clear as to what that cause always is, but it's probably related to vascular disease. As we age, a large majority of people will develop high blood pressure. These are changes that occur to the elasticity of the blood vessels, and some of these things will cause similar changes in the blood flow in the kidney, and that will cause decreases in the kidney's efficiency. So we often see as people age that there will be some decline in kidney function.
Okay, so along with aging, what are some of the other conditions or healthcare issues that could cause a decline in our kidney health?
The two biggest ones by far, accounting for probably 75% of kidney disease, are diabetes, number one, and high blood pressure, number two. There are other things that can happen. People can have what I would refer to as a plumbing problem, a blockage of flow. In men, as we age, the prostate grows, and that can cause an impediment to emptying the bladder. There can be structural issues from people getting blockages from kidney stones. There can be blood flow issues in the kidneys, which can occur from vascular disease. There are problems that can happen from medications, some prescriptions, some even over the counter. And there's a small group of hereditary kidney diseases and also autoimmune processes, mistakes in the immune system, if you will, where the immune system is activated and inadvertently recognizes part of the kidney as being foreign and attacks it and causes damage.
Okay, so can you talk to us a little bit about what we know as chronic kidney disease, or CKD? What is that exactly?
So chronic kidney disease is a term that refers to abnormal kidney function that has been present for a period of over 3 months. They specifically look at a number called a GFR, which stands for glomerular filtration rate, and that is a number that is mathematically calculated based on a blood test called creatinine. They look at that number, and if that number is under 60%, or the patient has protein coming out in the urine, if these things are occurring for more than 3 months, they'll define that as chronic kidney disease. Now, outside of looking at it just as a definition, what we're generally looking at is the effects of other disease processes, as we mentioned, blood pressure, diabetes, things of that nature, causing injury and scar to occur in the kidney, therefore decreasing their function over time.
Okay, we need to take a break right now, but when we come back, we'll be back with more with Dr. Rubin to talk more about kidney disease and how we can take care of our kidneys and prevent some of these illnesses. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Dr. Adam Rubin is still with us, and we're talking about chronic kidney disease. So, Dr. Rubin, can you tell us, when someone's been diagnosed with chronic kidney disease, what are their treatment options?
Some of that will depend on what the cause of the kidney dysfunction is. So when we first meet somebody and look at things, we'll often take a look with an ultrasound image to make sure that there is not a mechanical or a blockage issue. If that was present, we would need to relieve that blockage, and often that would be done with assistance of a urology doctor. Now, when we look at other things that can be adjusted to try to change the course of kidney dysfunction, we're going to look at medications and make sure that there are not medications that are problematic. And in some cases, for managing blood pressure, there are medications that will be more beneficial than others. So we often look at making those sorts of changes. And then generally, we look at the control of disease processes that have led to the kidney dysfunction in the first place, mostly controlling blood pressure and controlling the blood sugar.
Okay, so, and you've touched on this. I want to go a little bit farther with it. It often seems like you're treating the complications of the kidney disease. Can you speak to that a little bit more about some of the complications and how you manage that?
So things that we look at, besides, as I mentioned, looking at blood pressure and seeing where glycemic control, blood sugar control would be in a patient with diabetes, we need to look at other things that the kidneys are involved in and make sure that those things are being regulated appropriately. We can run into problems where people get trouble with control of fluid management. The kidneys, by their function, are regulating fluid volume. And if they're abnormal, we can run into issues where people have too much fluid and develop swelling and higher blood pressure. So we sometimes need to use medications like diuretics, which will help increase fluid removal from the body. We'll look at the other metabolic parameters that the kidneys are controlling, making sure that the acid and alkali balance in the blood, the pH level, is adequate, and sometimes we need to make adjustments and supplement that. That can also slow down deterioration in the kidney disease. We would look at managing somebody's blood count, their red blood cells. Patients with kidney dysfunction often develop anemia, and we need to make sure that the iron metabolism is controlled and that we're potentially using medicines to stimulate red blood cell production to avoid complications of anemia. And we look at bone and mineral balance to ensure that we don't have issues with bone weakness.
Okay, certainly a complicated and complex issue for sure. So I'd like to switch a little bit now and have you talk to us a little bit about end-stage renal disease. What is that?
So end-stage renal disease can be defined as a GFR number of under 15 and somebody then being on dialysis. But basically what we're looking at is a situation where somebody has developed enough kidney dysfunction or kidney failure that without utilization of dialysis therapy, they would die from the kidney failure. So dialysis is a replacement of kidney function. It does not fix the kidneys, but it acts to replace the functions that the kidneys are no longer able to provide.
Okay, so can you tell us a little bit more about what dialysis entails?
So dialysis can be done in a couple different forms. The most commonly done form is what's called hemodialysis, and that would involve a patient going to a dialysis center where the patient's blood is run through a dialysis machine. Now, a dialysis machine works like an artificial kidney. The blood will go into the machine, and the machine, just like a kidney would, will adjust fluid volume, correct acid and alkali balance, adjust the chemical balance of the blood as far as sodium, potassium, chloride, and other electrolyte levels. And that's done in a continuous circuit where blood is going through the machine and returning to the patient continuously. And that takes about 3.5 or 4 hours and has to be done 3 times a week. So it's a very intensive treatment for the patients, and it can be very difficult in that 3 days a week, you have to go to get your dialysis treatment. There's no days off. There's no vacation. So it's a difficult process for patients.
Okay. And we heard earlier in the show about Melissa's story where she actually chose to not do dialysis and instead had a kidney transplant. So can you tell us, speaking generally, how successful are kidney transplants?
Generally, they're great. We look at kidney transplants. There's national data that's compiled looking at numbers that are expected for survival at 1 year and 5 years. There's a little bit of a difference between the type of kidney that the patient receives, whether it's a living donor or whether it's from a cadaver or a deceased donor. The numbers and success rates for a living donor are a little bit better than those of the deceased donor. But a 1 year survival should be well over 90%, often approaching 93, 94%. The 5 year survivals are about 80%, a little bit lower perhaps with the deceased donor than the living donor. Transplant, though, is still a type of treatment. People still have to take medications and have, follow up closely with physicians, but it'll take somebody off of dialysis and has the closest return to normal life.
Okay, so in about the last 30 seconds, I would like for you to tell us how we can keep from getting to this point of needing dialysis or a transplant. What can we do to keep our kidneys healthy?
The biggest things are going to be management of blood pressure, management of diabetes if somebody is diabetic, and then follow up with your family physician for routine screening blood work, where we would look at the function of the kidneys in the blood with a test called creatinine. And we would look at urine tests to see if there is protein or blood coming out in the urine. If those things are identified, then have referral to a nephrologist who could look at the situation more closely and then help intervene and try to reverse or slow down any potential changes.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Rubin, for this valuable information. I also want to thank Melissa for sharing her story and for you tuning in. Until next week, stay fit, stay well, and stay healthy for life with Healthy Living for Life. Bye now.
Healthy Living for Life is brought to you by Mountain Pacific Quality Health in partnership with AARP Montana. We'd love to hear from you. If you have suggestions for future programs, visit our website at mpqhf.org or call us at 406-443-4020. You can also catch us on YouTube by visiting our website and clicking on the Healthy Living for Life logo. Production facilities provided by Video Express Productions.